Yeah.
Okay, the number 9 I have is ad Orientem, which of course the new Mass can be celebrated ad Orientem, but it's not, and it almost never is.
Yeah.
And I think that is, honestly, if you asked me, said, okay, what is one thing, you're only allowed to change one thing about how the Mass is celebrated today, the new Mass is celebrated today, and only one, that would be it. Yeah. I would say it would have to be celebrated ad Orientem because it gives a completely different character to the entire celebration of the liturgy, because no longer is it a dialogue between people. No longer is it a show by Father where he feels like this obligation to
smile, to show crowd, a winning smile. Yeah,
right, exactly, and try to be personable and all those things that might be important outside of Mass, but they have nothing to do with being at the Mass. And by turning himself to God, he basically is saying, "I am leading you to the promised land." It'd be like Moses trying to cross, the Red Sea backwards or something, looking at the people, or trying to go, across the promised land without looking the direction he was going. And so I really think that part of the Latin Mass, it's unbelievable, I think, how different the entire feeling of a Mass becomes when the priest turns around. It's hard to describe until you go. I mean, once you go to a Mass, and of course the Eastern liturgies, that's where I first experienced it myself, was when I went to Eastern Catholic parishes for their Divine Liturgy, and the priest was ad Orientem, and I was thinking, wow, this really is different. I mean, I know I am at a worship service. I know I'm at a sacrifice as well. I know I'm at the sacrifice where he is offering up these gifts to the Father through the Son in the Holy Spirit. And your typical Mass, parish Mass today, though, he's just facing you. We're having a conversation, and maybe he's saying some great things. Who knows? But more often than not, it just becomes a human dialogue instead of a worship of God.
Yeah, and the liturgists in the '60s lied. They said, "Look, we found these early churches, and the altar is off the wall; it's freestanding, and that means that the priest was facing the people." That was what they taught everybody in the seminaries and in the conferences, liturgical conferences. Well, like you said, the Eastern churches have freestanding altars; they're off the wall.
Right.
But where's the priest stand?
Right, he's facing. He's between us and the people and the altar.
His back is to the people. So just because an altar is off the wall, a freestanding altar, doesn't mean that he was standing and facing the people. It's a false presumption, and that was the excuse used in the early '60s to promote versus populum celebration.
There's also something diabolical about the fact that there's such a resistance to ad Orientem in the church, because there's nothing in the rubrics that say you can't do that. In fact, the rubrics kind of show that you're supposed to celebrate that way, because there's a few places where it says turn towards the people and say, whatever. Yeah. And it's like, but I tell you what, I've seen examples of a priest, young priests particularly, who decide to celebrate, even like a daily Mass, ad Orientem, and the stink that's raised.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, the bishop jumps in usually quicker than you can imagine to shut that down quickly. And the way people get upset, and it's just like, I'm sorry, but I just feel like that's diabolical, because I don't know what else it could be. Because really, from a human standpoint, why do you care? What is the big difference if he's facing you or facing towards the altar while he's saying these prayers? Because he still faces you when he's talking to you.
Yeah, he turns around.
And he's still, and when he's giving a homily, it's not like his back is to you, because then he's talking to you. And so the fact that there's such a deep resistance to that, I just think it's kind of scary.
I think you're right. Especially when you're in a church, a historical church, where there is a high altar against the wall. Right. And you have to use the silly IKEA table out in the transept. It's retarded. It doesn't match. Let the guy.
Oh, you're kind of looking at that altar like, oh, that's so beautiful. And here he is. It's like,
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
And I know, knowing a number of young priests, they would love to do that. But they just are basically forbidden to do it. Maybe not explicitly, sometimes explicitly, but they just would never be allowed to do that. And I just think that's sad.
Yeah. Well, it says something about what bishops and monsignors and higher up priests think the liturgy is.
Right.
They think it's when all of it is 100% dialogue between them and the people, and it's not.
Right. And it's also the whole point is the focus is on the people, making them happy. And it's like that's not even a consideration in the worship of God. It's honoring God and worshiping him, not trying to make people feel comfortable or happy about it. So